All right. Good morning, everybody. It is Sunday morning and week 22 of our study of the book of Genesis. Let's start with prayer and we'll do a quick review and see where God takes us today. Heavenly Father, thank you for today, this time and this place, this body of believers. Father, and the opportunity to come together in your name and to get into your word and to seek you to bring life into what we read. Father, we just want to honor you and thank you and give you praise, for you are good, you are God, and we are not. We are so grateful to be included in your family, not by anything that we've done, but by your grace, by your mercy, by your incomparable love. So Father, be Father here, be God, be the shepherd of our hearts, and guide us through today's reading and bring life to this and give us something that we can carry away and that will change us and draw us closer to you. Father, we love you and we thank you and give you all honor, all glory, and all praise in Jesus' name. Amen. So, all right. This is probably, I don't know if I'm going to keep using this page, or if I keep going, I'm going to end up with letters too small to read, but we have 21 weeks so far. I'll probably start a new screen next week. But as for last week, we covered Genesis 34 through 35 and a half. In 34, we covered the story of Dinah being taken by Shechem, who was the prince of the land, how Jacob's sons pretended to make an agreement with Shechem and the people of Shechem, and basically they set the people up. They intended to deceive them, so that when they were in the midst of the pains of their agreement, Simeon and Levi went in and murdered the men of the town and stole their stuff, stole their property, stole their people. And Jacob was not happy. He said, basically, look what you've done. You've made us stink to the people in the area, like everyone's going to be against us. Then we get to chapter 35, and God, in amazing good timing, says, it's time for you to get out of here. You need to leave. And he calls them not just out. It's like a lot of times people think, that God will just deliver you from something, but God always delivers us from something to something. He doesn't just call us out of, but to something. Generally, he calls us to him, calls him to himself. So he didn't just call them out of Shechem, he called them back to the land that he'd been promised, back to the land of his father, but most importantly, he called him back to Bethel, which is the place where Jacob met God on his way out on this journey. So he brings him back to the place where he met God before, and it's kind of a picture of a return to righteousness. He's been out there, he's been in the world, he's done some good things, he's done some bad things, his family has got a stink on him, and so God calls him back. Come back to the place where you met me. Come back to the place where you established a covenant with me, where I established a covenant with you. And so on the way, Jacob says, leave all your foreign gods, change your garments. Let's leave the past here. One of the side notes of that whole foreign gods, again, it's new information to me, and it's still a lot of fun. But these were, they were points of worship. They were focuses of worship. They were generally expensive, like they were works of art, but also they tended to be deeds to the land. So in having his people bury those things, like when they went and took Shechem, they took that all they owned. That included the household gods. So he said, basically, all these things that you gained through treachery, leave those behind. Leave all the rings, the signs of relationship or agreement or alliances. All these things, he took them and he buried them under a tree in Shechem and left them there. It's like, we're going to leave the treachery behind. We're going to leave the gain that God didn't give us behind, and we're going to return to God. When he gets to Bethel, God reestablishes his covenant with Jacob. Emphasizes that your name is Jacob, but you'll be called Israel. I'm going to be your God. I'm going to give you and your descendants the whole shebang, so to speak. And then right there, as we were wrapping up that passage, we had the birth of Benjamin and the death of Rachel. And that brings us to where we are today. But again, just going through the three questions. As we read, go through, where is the God of love in this passage? Why did he preserve this in his word? How he preserved it might be an interesting study too. But and how does this passage apply to my life? So where is the God of love? And part of that, I mean, I've talked about this at least 22 times, but one of the problems people have when they're reading the Bible is they tend to look at it through a human perspective, a human lens, a very self-centered lens. If we look at it, but we look for God's love and how he's expressing his love, it forces us to change the perspective of what we're reading. We see, for like some passages, all we see is God's judgment, his wrath, his punishment, but say, okay, but if you turn around and say, okay, how does this show us his love? Then you come and look at it from his point of view, and it changes the scope of things. You start seeing exactly not just what God did, but all the things he didn't and could have done. The places where he held his hand back, held back punishment. Hebrews has a great line in there where the author is telling the Jews, they're like why God's been so cruel, he's done this and that, and the author says, like, what you really ought to be seeing is, like, how is there anybody left to complain, considering how awful you've been through the years and how many of the prophets were killed. So where is the God of love in this passage? Shifts our perspective to look at things through God's eyes instead of just ours. Anyway, so that brings us to chapter 35, verse 22, and this is not even going to change, and it went all the way back.
You use the word shebang. Is that in the Bible?
If it is, I didn't know. I'm not sure where I got that. It does kind of sound Jewish. Shebang, Shabbat. I'm going to mess up if I keep playing with this. Thank you, Peter. All right. So we're at verse 22. We only have a little bit left in this chapter, and naturally we're going to see more examples of things going wrong. And it came about, while Israel was living in that land, that Reuben went and slept with his father's concubine Bilhah, and Israel heard about it. Just that right there. It's like, everything else is good. They're cleaning house. They're going down. God is reestablishing the covenant, and then Reuben does this, which on some level you wonder, how was this even permitted? I mean, how did we even get here? And I'm actually kind of glad that we don't have all those details, because this is an indication that things are still not quite right. There are things wrong with relationships. We don't know what, but we can see the fruit of it. And we're about to get into some fun genealogy, but we'll get through that and touch some stuff. But now there were 12 sons of Jacob. The sons of Leah were Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, then Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. The sons of Rachel were Joseph and Benjamin. And the sons of Bilhah, Rachel's female slave, were Dan and Naphtali. And the sons of Zilpah, Leah's female slave, were Gad and Asher. I think it's interesting that Leah spent so much time as being the one not loved, but she had as many sons as the others combined. And she had a daughter. That's fascinating. These were the sons of Jacob who were born to him in Paddan Aram. Jacob came to his father Isaac at Mamre of Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had resided. Now the days of Isaac were 180 years. Then Isaac breathed his last and died, and was gathered to his people, an old man of ripe age, and his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. So if we back up, when Jacob got Esau's blessing from Isaac, Isaac was 100. So at this point in the story, 80 years have passed. Also, it's probably important to note that this isn't all happening chronologically. Like, we know that this is what happened when Isaac was 180, but the next part of the story may be kind of in between or whatever, but they're kind of like explaining how things wrapped up and went on. But Isaac was blind and old and thought his days were nearly numbered, and lived almost double what he'd already lived. So you just never know. But the important thing is that by this point, Esau and Jacob were able to come together peaceably and bury their father. And then we move on, literally. Chapter 36. Now, these are the records of the generations of Esau, that is Edom. So y'all bear with me. I'm going to explain some of why this is in here as well as reading through it. So Esau took wives from the daughters of Canaan, Adah, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, and Aholibamah, the daughter of Anah, the granddaughter of Zibeon the Hivite. Also Basemath, Ishmael's daughter, the sister of Nebaioth. Adah bore Eliphaz to Esau, and Basemath gave birth to Reuel. And Aholibamah gave birth to Jush. I'm not really sure how to pronounce that. Jush, Jalem, and Korah. These are the sons of Esau who were born to him in the land of Canaan. All right, so I'm going to pause right there. I will read the next part, and then I'll go back. Then Esau took his wives, his sons, his daughters, and all his household, and his livestock, and all his cattle, and all his property which he had acquired in the land of Canaan, and went to another land away from his brother Jacob. For their possessions had become too great for them to live together, and the land where they resided could not support them because of their livestock. So Esau lived in the hill country of Seir. Esau is Edom. I want to point out that when Jacob met Esau on his way back from Padan Aram, when Esau left their meeting, he went back to Edom, the land of Seir. So already at that point, that was where Esau had lived. We talked a couple of weeks back about how did they kind of resolve the issue of Jacob's inheritance and his blessing with Esau right there with his father. And it appears that already Esau had moved on. Like he was there close by enough to visit his father, but he had already separated his household and was living in Seir as opposed to in Hebron. And now we got this where it explains that part of that reason, and there may have been like a kind of like he had established a settlement out here, but at this point when Isaac had died, he went ahead and separated completely and moved on to his own land, became his own people. And at this point, Esau is Edom, Edom meaning red. So the land was named after him, but he is the place is him. The people were of Esau. And another thing is like we're going to be getting into the descendants of Esau, and it's a rather long list, and it's rather detailed as well. And you can kind of go through and start wondering, why did they put all this in here? I mean, none of this has anything to do with our team. These are literally all people who weren't part of this picture. They were something else. They went off to another land. Why does this have anything to do with anything? And what it comes down to is knowing who you are and who you aren't, or whose you are and whose you aren't. We look at Abraham having both Ishmael and Isaac. They gave a genealogy of Ishmael to say who Ishmael was, who his wives were, who his children were to a rather large extent, and then Isaac and so forth. And when you look at so much of what God has promised that is specific to a bloodline, who the Christ would be and who he'd be related to, and who his chosen line is. Like there's two sons here again, Esau and Jacob, and God has chosen Jacob. So we have a very detailed account for a couple of generations. This is who came from Jacob. This is who came from Esau, and like it's very explicit of Esau, his wives, his sons, their sons, the clans, all that range. These are these people, and this is the line of God's chosen people. So you have on one side a clear line drawn between God's chosen and those who were not part of that covenant, but also you get it to the extent, the detail that they go to, so that you can see. This isn't like they're not just saying, okay, that's that side of family, this is this side. They were meticulous. They knew exactly who everybody was and who they were related to. They kept detailed records, and they really kept details. That becomes more important as you go down and you start getting into like the Chronicles and the Kings and into the extremely detailed genealogies. But when we understand that Jesus, when he came, had to be of the line of Judah and had to be in the line of David, had to be, there's so many specific details that he had to be, and the line that he had to follow. This culture, this practice of keeping detailed genealogies is absolutely necessary so that they could go back and trace. Like today, right now, If you go into like a Jewish community or in Israel, they know the people who are of the bloodline of Levi. They know the people who are born into the priesthood bloodline. And you have to, in order to do certain roles and stuff, you have to be able to prove by the genealogies who you're related to and how you're related to them. They really get into it. You actually see that in, I think it's Ezra, where they had some people who claimed that they were Levitical, but they didn't have the genealogies, and so they had to wait until they could dig into it to make sure. The bloodlines are incredibly important to them. So, that said, here's a whole bunch of names. These, then, are the records of the generations of Esau, the father of the Edomites, in the hill country of Seir. These are the names of Esau's sons: Eliphaz, the son of Esau's wife Adah, and Reuel, the son of Esau's wife Basemath. The sons of Eliphaz were Teman, Omar, Zepho, Gatam, and Kenaz. Timnah was a concubine of Esau's son Eliphaz, and she bore Amalek and Eliphaz. These are the sons of Esau's wife Adah. And these are the sons of Reuel, Nahath, Zerah, Shema, and Mizah. These were the sons of Esau's wife Basemath. And these were the sons of Esau's wife Aholibamah. The daughter of Anah, the granddaughter of Zibeon, she bore to Esau Jeush, Jalem, and Korah. Just pause there real quick. It's interesting to me how specific they were about the wives and who they were. It's not just Aholibamah, it's the Aholibamah, daughter of Anah, the granddaughter of Zibeon. So there's kind of an implication, or it seems like there's an implication of the importance of the bloodlines and alliances that may have been had. Zibeon is a name we're going to see several times. No explanation, but it's mentioned as though it's significant. So the people of the time would have said, okay, I know that's a name to be reckoned with. These are the chiefs of the sons of Esau. The sons of Eliphaz, the firstborn of Esau, are Chief Teman, Chief Omar, Chief Zepho, Chief Kenaz, Chief Korah, Chief Gatam, and Chief Amalek. These are the chiefs descended from Eliphaz in the land of Edom. I'm going to pause real quick and just take a look at this bubble. Okay, that's less interesting. Literally of Eliphaz. I thought it was going to give us something on chiefs. Anyway.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. What it stands for.
And it's like a chief. It's a man in charge, a governor, a prince. I just hoped it would be something really concise right there. But they are clan leaders. Probably a little bit more than that, maybe less than a king. Of the land of Edom, these are the sons of Adah. And these are the sons of Reuel, Esau's son, Chief Nahath, Chief Zerah, Chief Shammah, and Chief Mizah. These are the chiefs descended from Reuel in the land of Edom. These are the sons of Esau's wife Basemath. And these are the sons of Esau's wife Aholibamah. Chief Jeush, I really ought to look that up one day. Chief Jalem and Chief Korah. These are the chiefs descended from Esau's wife Aholibamah, the daughter of Anah. These are the sons of Esau, that is Edom, and these are their chiefs. Again, lots of details, lots of explanation. So if you happen to hear this name, this guy wasn't just Jalem, he was Chief Jalem. He was the first Jalem. He was the one in charge. Yes, sir.
It just seems like, usually in English anyways, you say chief, and it usually indicates like the one in charge. But here it seems like everyone is in charge. So maybe it's got a different interpretation than just what we interpret as chief.
It had a lot to do with the way they spread out and like their cities being like family groups. So it's like each one of them spread out and established his own little community. So like the Edomites, all of them had the sub-clans, and each of these had their own small people. But yeah, it is interesting. But they definitely didn't say kings. It was chiefs. So it's like more like princes in the land rather than kings or something to that effect. It's hard to tell. I haven't found a lot of detail on that. But again, the point here is these are the sons of Edom. These are the heads of these clans that come of the Edomites. Also interesting is we have, again, with Ishmael and the Ishmaelites, he had sons that were like princes of their land. Now we have like Esau and the Edomites, and like his sons were powerful. So there's this thing, these sons and sons of Abraham have still got this blessing. When God said, "Be fruitful and multiply," when God said that you'd be the father of nations, of many nations, it's like that blessing hit. And when they started having kids, they weren't just kids; they were kids that started their own clans. So these are the sons of Seir, the Horite, the inhabitants of the land. Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, again, see, this is the sons of Seir. So these are the people, I think, outside of Edom. These are the people that Edom's people mingled with. So, like, Seir is the land that they went to, and Edom is a land within that area, and Seir apparently is a major figure in there. And one of his sons, Zibeon, is the name of the grandfather of Aholibamah. So again, we've got a lot of name dropping for Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, Anah, Dishon, Ezer, and Dishan. These are the chiefs descended from the Horites, the sons of Seir in the land of Edom. And that's an interesting thing too. Also, is you got Edom in the land of Seir, and now you got Seir in the land of Edom. So it's lots of mingling going on here. And the sons of Lotan were Hori and Himam, and Lotan's sister was Timnah. That's a name we've heard already. And these are the sons of Shobal: Alvan, Manahath, Ebal, Shepho, and Onam. Pause right there, just kind of a side thing. We know we translated their names from the original to make them easier to say. I think we missed out somewhere in there.
I'm hoping that tested on that when we get to heaven.
No, there's only one test and it's already been passed. Thank God. No. And these are the sons of Zibeon: Aiah. They really didn't like consonants. And Anah. He is the Anah who found the hot springs in the wilderness when he was pasturing the donkeys of his father Zibeon. And I love that, these little things. Like, we have no idea. Like, okay. But he's famous to them. So a lot of these things, they drop these names like it should mean something to us, and it probably did 4,000 years ago. And these are the children of Anah: Dishon and Aholibamah. Sounds familiar. The daughter of Anah. And these are the sons of Dishon: Himdan, Eshben, Ithran, and Cheran. These are the sons of Ezer: Bilhan, Zaavan, and Achan. These are the sons of Dishan: Uz and Aaron. Okay. These are the chiefs descended from the Horites: Chief Lotan, Chief Shobal, Chief Zibeon, Chief Anah, Chief Dishon, Chief Ezer, and Chief Dishan. These are the chiefs descended from the Horites according to their various chiefs in the land of Seir. Almost feels like that ought to be some kind of epic poem where everything ends up in the land of Seir, or I don't know. Now these are the kings who reigned in the land of Edom before any king reigned over the sons of Israel. Bela, the son of Beor, reigned in Edom, and the name of his city was Dinhabah. Then Bela died, and Jobab, the son of Zerah of Bozrah, became king in his place. Then Jobab died, and Husham of the land of the Temanites became king in his place. Then Husham died, and Hadad, the son of Bedad, who defeated Midian, and this is like Dr. Seuss, defeated Midian in the field of Moab, became king in his place, and the name of the city was Avith. Then Hadad died, and Samlah of Masrekah became king in his place. Then Samlah died, and Shaul of Rehoboth, of the Euphrates River became king in his place. Then Shaul died, and Baal-Hanan, the son of Akbar, became king in his place. Then Baal-Hanan, the son of Akbar, died, and Hadar became king in his place. And the name of his city was Pau. And his wife's name was Mehetabel, the daughter of Matred, daughter of Mazahab. Just a little further. Now these are the names of the chiefs descended from Esau according to their families and their localities by their names. Chief Timnah, Chief Alva, Chief Jethath, Chief Aholibamah. That's interesting.
It wasn't Timnah a daughter
Yes.
earlier?
And Aholibamah as well.
Trying to keep it straight.
Yeah, good luck. There really ought to be a graph up here, but I think, if we had one of those pictures that had all the little pins and the pieces of yarn going, I wouldn't. Chief Elah, Chief Pinan, Chief Kinez, Chief Teman, Chief Mibzar, Chief Magdiel, and Chief Irem. These are the chiefs of Edom, that is Esau, the father of the Edomites, according to their settlements in the land of their possession. So, now you know. So those are all the people who were not the people of Israel. They were not the people, but they were their own people. And I guess really significant is that they were their own and they were separate. But also, I can't get away from that. They're descendants of Abraham, and the blessing of God does not fall lightly. And so they became many nations. And I've always found it interesting that when God blessed Abraham and said, I'm going to bless you through your son Isaac, or through the son that you and Sarah are going to have, and Abraham's like, I wish you'd bless Ishmael too. It's like, okay, well, since he's your son, I'm going to bless him. And when God blesses, it may take a long time to see that, but his word can't return void. And when he put that blessing out, and that blessing of you'll be the father of a nation and of many nations, it's saturated reality. In fact, even this land, there's no indication here that Esau went into that land and just took over. It's like he went in and it was the Edom in the land of Seir, and by the time it was done, it was Seir in the land of Edom. It was just they kind of took over. If you look at their history and you think about the Egyptians and their fear of the Israelites, they may have had more reason to fear than we necessarily give them credit. Like, these people expand and populate till that everybody is them. They just kind of take over where they are, at least at this point.
Yeah,
so now,
so it doesn't seem like there was a gender attached to names like we have today. It was more like there was a meaning to the name. It could be for male or female.
I think that in the original, I'd have to check. I think that in the original, there were masculine and feminine indicators on the names, but that don't necessarily translate over. For example, at least there was like Daishon and Daishan, and at least one spot, if you look at the Hebrew, it's the same word both times, but it's two different people. So I think some of it gets lost in the translation. The other thing is, it's possible that the reason that we see these wives' names so prominent is they may actually have been the chiefs. They may have been the women in charge of these cultures. We know that in the land of Canaan, a lot of the pagan practices that were there had women in charge in, shall we say, very negative ways. I'm not saying that about this particular group, but having women leaders was not completely unheard of, depending on how they approach it. Now, I won't get into all that, but there are some linguistic things that happen when they translate it into English, but there's also some cultural things that I think we're missing as background. But it was definitely interesting to see, like, okay, these are the wives, and the next thing we see is we see chiefs with the same names. It's like, what happened? Don't know. On a positive note, we get to get out of the genealogies and back to the story. So, now Jacob lived in the land where his father had lived as a stranger, in the land of Canaan. These are the records of the generations of Jacob. Joseph, when he was 17 years of age, was pasturing the flock with his brothers, while he was still a youth, along with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought back a bad report about them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his other sons, because he was a son of his old age. And he made him a multicolored tunic. And his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, and so they hated him and could not speak to him on friendly terms. So, a couple of things here. One, I would have thought that Benjamin was more of a child of his old age, because he was the youngest, and Jacob would have been older, but apparently Joseph got in. Of course, it would have been hard for him to look on Benjamin the same way, because the birth of Benjamin was the death of Rachel. But going through this multicolored tunic, I think anybody who's been raised in church has heard Joseph and the Coat of Many Colors. And there was that musical with a Technicolor Dreamcoat or something like that. Anyway, I looked up this multicolored tunic, and it's very interesting, because it's translated pretty consistently as multicolored, but it literally means palm length or sole length. It implies a garment that reaches the long sleeves that go to the palm and the long length that goes down to the soles of your feet. But it's generally it's also understood that it's going to be multicolored in the process. Not sure why. Possibly to have something of that length, of that size, you're going to end up with more than one stretch of fabric. I don't know, but it is what is described here is not your typical work outfit. It is, in fact, the word multicolored is this sole or palm, and again means that. But the tunic that's the same word used for. It means a linen garment. It's generally considered like an undergarment, not like an overcoat. Like we always picture Joseph walking around in this tunic with this coat over top of it that was multicolored. But this is talking about a very elaborate just tunic. It's not workwear. It's the same word used for the tunic that the priests wore, the linen tunic that they wore under their priestly robes. In fact, it's also a word used in at least one other case. It talks about the garments of women. Not that he was wearing a woman's clothing, but it was finer make. It was more elaborate, more decorative. But it's the kind of clothes you give somebody who's going to be working at home in the house, not out in the field. But it is specifically the garment that's worn not over but under. It's the one next to the skin, not the overcloak or whatever. So what he's given him is an outfit that's not made to be worked in. He's not just the favorite, he's favored. And we're going to see in just a minute, like the other sons are working out in the fields and doing everything, and Joseph is wearing the nice clothes.
And he's coming by to visit them, so he's not out there working.
Right. And if he's bringing back reports, again, he's snitching on them. He's that brother. And Jacob is openly favoring Joseph. I tell you, when you have a favored son, there ends up being strife. We've seen this legitimately in where God has favored Isaac over Ishmael, and there was strife. He favored Jacob over Esau. There was strife. Now we have Jacob actually favoring one over all these, and there's considerable strife. And in some of this favoring, Joseph clearly did not learn humility, let's just say he needed to work on his people skills. I mean, maybe not 11 brothers, but at least 10 of them. They couldn't speak kindly to him. I mean, they couldn't stand him. And here we go. Then Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Please listen to this dream which I have had, for behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf stood up and also remained standing, and behold, your sheaves gathered around and bowed down to my sheaf." It's like, now look here. Like, behold is kind of like, look here. Like, and look here, your sheaves gathered around. And I think even if you didn't have a culture that took dreams seriously, this one would be pretty obvious. It's like, mine stood up, and yours all gathered around and bowed down to mine. Then his brothers said to him, "Are you actually going to reign over us? Are you really going to rule over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. I want to go to that repetition because it seemed odd to me that they said it twice. The "are you actually going to reign over us" is like, are you going to become our king? The meaning of it is like, are you going to actually be raised up as king over us? And the second one, I almost wonder if this was actually two sentences. So like, are you going to actually become king over us, or are you just going to rule over us? You're just going to govern over us. You're just going to kind of lord it over us, which they kind of already felt like he was doing anyway. But here he is claiming this dream, and the dreams, when they had dreams of meaning, it always came from God. It was always like this implication, like this is something that means something bigger. And it was very much so. And I'll tell you, just on that note, there's a lot of people who want to hear a word from God and have a word from God, but they're so eager to get that word and be able to speak that word that they don't always seek the wisdom as to when and how. Because like Jesus had many things he knew to say and knew how to say, or knew what to say, but he also knew how to say. Like he could give a rebuke very kindly, or he could give a rebuke very strongly, and that was also part of what God gave him. And Jacob has this message, but there's no indication he ever sought God as to what to do with his message. He just started spitting it out and telling everybody. This is one of those things, I think, where God gave him enough rope to hang himself, because Joseph needed some. He needed some guidance, and he wasn't getting it with a dad that was giving him everything.
He was young and impetuous, but he did grow out of it.
Oh yes, which is hopeful for many fathers. Yeah. So he says all this, gets his brothers mad. That's not enough. Then he had yet another dream, and informed his brothers of it, and said, "Behold, I have had yet another dream. And behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars were bowing down to me." He also told it to his father, as well as to his brothers. And his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have had? Am I and your mother and your brothers actually going to come to bow down to the ground before you?" And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. So he rebuked him, but he didn't really do much more than that. He's like, just kind of puzzled this. It kind of reminds me of the part where Mary stored these things in her heart, treasured these things in her heart about Jesus. So he's got these dreams that have got him thinking well of himself. Then his brothers went out to pasture their father's flock in Shechem, which I find fascinating. At first I thought maybe like these stories happened in different order, but it's in chronological as far as that. But they went a pretty good distance out to pasture these sheep. They were not close by. And Israel said to Joseph, "Are your brothers not pasturing the flocks in Shechem? Come, and I will send you to them." And he said to him, "I will go." And then he said to him, "Go now and see about the welfare of your brothers and the welfare of the flock, and bring word back to me." So his brothers are out there, pretty good distance away. Joseph is at home. He sends them out to go check on them. So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. A man found him, and behold, he was wandering in the field, and the man asked him, "What are you looking for?" He said, "I'm looking for my brothers. Please tell me where they are pasturing the flock." It's interesting. Possibly there's more going on in the story than what's actually recorded, but it's almost like he's there, he's recognized, his brothers are known. Would have been a really big flock to have to venture that far. And then the man said, "They have moved from here, for I heard them say, 'Let's go to Dothan.'" Not the same Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. I'm trying to decide if we got time to really get into this or if I should go ahead and wrap us up. And I'm thinking I'm going to stop here. And then we'll get into the plot against Joseph next week. So, one of the things that we're going to be getting into with all this. We have someone who's got a calling on his life. We've got Joseph. He's calling. Part of his calling is he's got favor. I mean, tremendous amount of favor. God's just blessed him with charm. He's not with his brothers, clearly, but brothers are really good at not seeing the good things in each other. But he's got a calling. He's got preparation here. We kind of skipping on ahead with what Joseph is going to be going into. He has been, again, he's got the charm, he's got the favor, but he's not out in the fields with his brothers. So the shepherding aspect of things he's familiar with, he knows, but he's at home. Presumably he's learning management skills. He's learning the kind of things that his father's doing as being a head of a household. Presumably he's not just sitting there doing nothing. I mean, his father does trust him to go get information and do things. So where he's about to go, he's going to need certain things. He's going to, in order to not just be lost in the mess, he's going to need favor. He's going to need certain skills that are going to draw attention to him. It's not just that God's giving him favor. He's equipping him with things for that favor to be useful. However, what he doesn't have is humility. He doesn't have a lick of it, as far as I can tell. I mean, he even, the dream that was clearly about his father and mother bowing to him, he told it boldly to his father and mother. It's like, really got to work on your people skills. Yes?
I never connected until just now, his interpretation of his ability to interpret the dream of Pharaoh, and then his own dreams that he had. I never connected.
Yes. I mean, yes. I mean, very, very much so. What's really interesting, and we'll bring this up in more detail later on, when Pharaoh has the dream and asks, "Can you interpret dreams?" Joseph said, "Only God can do that." Granted, we're talking about another 17 years or so, that Joseph's heart has changed. Right now, he's a favored son. He's pampered. He's a brat. Okay, I mean, he's a skilled brat, but I mean, he is.
He had time to think about what he had done.
Well, we talked before about these different characters. Like Abraham, when he first started following God, was put in situation after situation after situation where he had to depend on God's faithfulness, not on the world around. In fact, he got to the point where he wouldn't even accept things given from other people because he trusted God so much. Isaac didn't have that much. There was the barrenness of Rebekah for 20 years, and God came through. But then we look at Jacob, that God has got to do so much with. And Jacob, he was a favorite son that was somewhat pampered, but then he ended up going into a situation where constantly, over and over again, in order to get anywhere with Laban, God had to be faithful, who God was, what he was. And being in those hard times and those hard places, and the way he pursued God in those things developed the character that ended up changing, that God changed his name from Jacob, supplanter, to one who struggles with God. The hard times he went through shaped him into the one, hard times plus seeking God shaped him into the man that God was calling him to be. Joseph has an incredible calling, but what he doesn't have is the shaping. So God's going to use that part of that calling, and his lack of maturity, lack of wisdom, lack of relationship with God is going to work together to put him in a situation where his only hope is to trust in God. So by the time we see Joseph actually stepping into the calling that God has made for him, he's had enough time to have to rely on God. But I'm getting way ahead of myself on that. So we see a young man with an amazing calling and much need of maturity. And we're going to see how God's going to use the shortcomings of the people in himself and in his life to work towards something that he's going to use as an opportunity. So, on that note, y'all work on your people skills. don't let anybody, don't let your brothers hate you. But until next time, like I said, we'll pick up here next time on 37:18 and get a little bit further into Joseph and maybe get to say a lot fewer names next week. Until then, seek God, let Him shape you, and be blessed. And I'll go push the buttons.